Hello, I go by Jay, and I have a few videos on this channel already, but this is going to be a little bit about me and kind of my life so far and some regrets I've had and where I'm at on my path. So, like the title says, I was an avionics technician for the Air Force. I did 4 years of that, and while I was in, I didn't really like what I was doing. I got stationed in Okinawa, Japan. So I got really lucky about where I was at. But some life events happened. My dad passed away while I was in, and I was 22 at the time. And that was really, I would say, life changing for me because he was someone that had my back no matter what. And he even went to Japan as soon as I got there. I didn't even know, I didn't have any friends there or anything, and he made the trip and saw me and was there for 2 months, I believe. And as soon as he left, uh, I ended up finding out he passed away. So, and there was some regrets. I was trying to be the tough guy and barely gave him a hug on his way back because I wanted him to know that I was comfortable here and maybe subconsciously that I was grown up and whatever I was feeling. So there's some guilt, and his passing was very the closest thing to me at that time as far as traumatic events. I don't like using the word traumatic, but I'd say it impacted me very deeply. So I went on kind of a spiritual journey, I would say, and philosophy, and wasn't finding any answers. And I kept sinking deeper and deeper into maybe a depression, you could call it. I never went to seek help or really talk to anybody about it. Just kind of, I went to work. I was working on airplanes and was a technician, so I had to show up. You can't just say I'm not going to work in the military. There's some rules about that, and it's legal trouble. So, anyways, I had some great supervisors. I'm not saying that they didn't work with me, but on a personal level, things weren't healed. I just patched it up and kept going, and I suffered from sleep issues where I kept waking up, and I think I still have some of that today. It's kind of turned into just a part of something I have to deal with, and it was from switching shifts, and you work nights and days and 12 to 16 hours. So just to give you a kind of a feel, and a lot of times Okinawa, Japan, it's very humid and hot, and you're in a big metal container with no AC. So as you can imagine, with pants and all that closed boots and nothing that would really breathe, not that I didn't mind it. I like sweating, but it was pretty tough work. You get home and you need your rest, and I just wasn't getting it. I was looking for answers. I was trying meditating. I was doing everything but seeking outside help. I was trying to find everything I needed inside, and there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And there's work I'm still doing. But I was not satisfied with where my life was. Around that point, I met my now wife. She was Okinawan, and we've been married for 3 years so far, and we dated for a while before we got married. About 8 years we lived together in Japan. I ended up leaving the Air Force. I just felt like it was something I didn't want to do, even though it was very safe and I could have provided for my family insurance-wise, everything on base. Shopping was great. Everything was taken care of, and you can't really get fired. Like, it's hard to mess up enough where they finally let you go. They'll retrain you. You might. It just wasn't what I wanted to do, and I've always felt like if you aren't happy, you should seek some other place. And it just, like I said, it wasn't for me. But I met some great people that kind of helped pull me, or helped me kind of, if I was a rock that was skipping across the ocean, it helped me keep making those skips, to just keep taking it day at a time, day at a time. And Okinawa was so beautiful, so it helped to have a lot of time in nature. I ended up leaving the Air Force, going home for 6 months, and this was before I was married with my now wife. We were still dating long distance for these 6 months, and I put an application to get my student visa where I could study in Japan. So that's why I did. I studied Japanese language, the intensive program, so it was like half the day of learning Japanese, and it was really, to be honest, it was more of an excuse just to be with my wife and that family we were trying to start there and that we already had. We lived in a tiny Japanese apartment. It was, I went from a really tiny dorm room in the Air Force to a tiny Japanese apartment that was about the same size, but now with multiple people, it becomes significantly more crowded. But my wife became a nurse, and while I was going to school, and I was pretty much just blowing through my savings and my inheritance from my dad passing away. So I did that for 2 years, and then around that time, COVID was going on, so everything was locked up, and the visa for my wife was very hard to get. It took a very long time. 2 more years we were in Japan. And that was a very stressful time because it was like I couldn't start my life, right? Because I wanted to come home, use my GI Bill, and start going to college. And during that time, I just had nothing to do. The 2 years after my schooling. And even during schooling, it was just kind of like biding time, right? And the world shut down, and we all ended up having to be inside. And I know a lot of people had a lot of tough life situations that they were dealing with. It affected everybody. But I say all this just as a preface for my real message, which is one of change and growth and getting through some really tough times, and sometimes just acknowledging the scars you have. I went through a period of time where I just didn't really want to wake up the next day. It was hard. It was like, okay, I knew that day and the next day and the next day it was just going to be the same thing. That my life was just at a standstill with no end in sight. And it wasn't anything I could do about it. It was like being stuck in a place with no updates on, hey, your life can start now, or hey, your visa, even once the world opened up somewhat, the visa process was so slow, so I was still stuck here, and I wasn't able to get a job in Japan with the language barrier and whatnot. I blew through all my savings and all my inheritance, and it was just me, and we were scraping by for a while. I did odds and ends occasionally, but there's not much that could do. I did with the language barrier. I can understand Japanese, but 2 years you're not fluent enough to be put in any kind of position other than warehouses and stuff like that. And like I said, I did some odds and ends to scrape by. Eventually, visa got approved 2 years, like I said, after about 2 years after school started. So now I've been in Japan a total of 9 years of my life. And that 9 years was not what I wanted to be doing with my life. I basically my whole 20s, and most of that was dealing on my own with my father's passing and some family changes going on in Japan. I say all this because many might relate to that stagnation feeling, or not being able to do what they want to do, or feel like their life is just stuck in the mud, and that's what it was. So we eventually make it back to here and found out my wife is pregnant, and we were able to move back in my parents' house, find out my wife is pregnant, and so we're like, wow, we're bringing this new life in the world, and we're not even really ready ourselves yet. And so life happens, and we have great support. But I start school, and I've been in school this whole time, and I chop wood, and I love it doing this because it keeps me, physically active, and that's something I enjoy doing. That's kind of what kept me sane in Japan, was hikes and going to the gym and the physical activity side of it. And there was times where that was taken away, and I felt a little deeper, and I was able to bring it myself back out of it with these physical activities and meditation. But I was paid very well in Air Force, and sometimes I think about how different things would have been if I just stayed in there. Like I said, everything was taken care of. I didn't really have to, if I wanted to go to gym or market or insurance or have a baby, like, there was no issues. And in fact, you get paid more with a bigger family. Now I'm scraping by, but I feel so at peace because I'm not doing something I don't want to do. If you made it this far in the video, for one, I feel like I'm kind of jumping around the place, but it's just kind of a little bit of my backstory, and maybe someone can relate, Now, I am still dealing with, I have ups and downs, days that I don't feel connected with things, and it just feels like it's me going through this stagnation, because I want to provide more for my family. And it's like, well, what comes after the college degree? Now it's hard for anybody to find a job, even with a college degree, or at least do what they like to do and make decent enough money to support a family. But we're making it work, and I have to remind myself that the biggest lesson I can pass down to my family would just be that do what makes you happy. Be unyielding in the quest to live a happy life. Because ultimately, that's what I want for my family. I want everybody to be happy doing what they want to do. And if I'm not leading by example, if I'm not like, hey, if I'm year by year, day by day stuck in the Air Force because I am too scared to take a chance to do what I want to do, then what kind of example am I setting for them? I'm not saying I live every day just courageously and a go-getter kind of thing. No, I'm just saying in general, if I'm slogging along, and there's nothing against just, sticking it out to retirement. That is a path. It's not a path that's necessarily for me or that I want for my family. But I'm not speaking down on that either. Some people don't have the opportunities I have, so I understand that. And they have no choice, or they can't risk it because their family's already big. And what do? You just leave? You just leave that support? No. So here I am today. Been here about 4 hours cutting wood. Probably be putting in a couple more hours, but I don't mind it. I could do this all day. And I get paid by how much wood I do, so it's not an issue, and I can kind of show up when I want and leave when I want. And if my family needs me, I don't have to be here. And I'm so lucky to have that. And if you can find that thing while you're working towards your passion projects, like for me, it's art, it's YouTube, it's a new business that I want to start. There's personal goals that I'm trying to get, and if you can find something that you don't mind doing, that you actually like doing, and that's flexible, where you can have a family, you've hit it. Just realize you've hit it. If you can find that, you're so lucky. And some of you just might be curious what some dude that was in the Air Force is up to now. What happens after you get out? And that's a fear, you know. That's a fear that a lot of people have. It's a fear I had a lot. It's like, well, what now? Am I just going to burn through this savings? And the answer was yes. For me, I burnt through it, you know, and I burnt through it fast. Not on purpose, but fast in the grand scheme of not making much. And you know, you got rent's due, and you have a restaurant that you like, and you know, there's always going to be things to spend money on. Always in my videos by saying, I love you guys and see you next video. And I know it just seems like kind of a shallow thing, because maybe it seems like I don't even mean it. I mean it. Like, I'm speaking to myself, and I'm speaking to anyone that's going through similar situations or just life in general. Everybody's got different situations that's going on. If you can find this kind of situation, like I said, that allows that flexibility to pursue your passions and your dreams, then bite into it. And it's not perfect. I'm still dealing with my own personal issues. I'm very sad a lot of days. And some days I don't even want to leave the house, but I got a baby girl now that loves me, and it gives me a reason, you know. And I have my wife, and I have my family, and I have my friends, you know. Not too many. I guess you can't have too many friends, but not too many close friends. If I ever needed somebody for me, I know they'd be there. That's what more could a man ask for? Or what more could anybody ask for? And been talking for almost 20 minutes now, and I never thought I could. I'm very shy and introverted, and it's just, I realize now that probably most people aren't listening anymore. Probably tuned off. If anybody made it to this point, I'm like, wow, because I'm not even interested in my own story that much. But if you can relate to any part, and I can dive deeper into my personal issues, like, not that I'm special in any way. Everybody's going through something, and everybody's going through some deep shit. Like, I realize that. But if you have something you're going through and you feel like no one's going through some similar stuff, I'll say, sorry. I wasn't going to talk about this, but my grandfather passed away recently, and he was kind of a rock of the family, and everybody looked up to him. And he was healthy as a horse, and he got a chest scan, and he had some blockages in the heart, so they said they needed to do emergency surgery. And you know, if you know my grandpa, he takes everything in stride, and he was happy-go-lucky to the very end. You know, he just didn't wake up from his surgery, and that just happened, you know. And it's like, that kind of shit is just life. And it's like, well, how do you move on? You have such a person that had such an impact on you, that was such a rock for the family, was always happy and loving, and just How do you live up to that? And how do you live up to that? Do my best. Somehow he had more hours in the day than the rest of us. He got so much done, and he passed away, and I realized he was mowing his slightly older neighbor's lawn. Now he was almost 80. He swam, went to the gym, did yoga, was mowing their lawn, was mowing half the neighborhood's lawn, took care of everything for my grandmother, like literally everything. He treated her like a princess, was always there for his family, always laughing, and never let anything get to him. He was just a rock. And I could make an hour video about my grandfather alone and how I would like to live up to those kind of standards, And I'm sure everybody has someone like that in their life. And if you are lucky enough to still have someone in your life and they're aging, take advantage of every single moment. And even when he was alive, I knew I should be doing that. And I did. I was cognizant of the fact that he was getting older and that, in the family there's heart issues and that something could happen any day. But there's so many stories in his life you could write a book about. Survival and rags to riches and just kindness, human kindness. He just exemplified so many things to so many people. Everybody knew him. Everybody loved him. If you know anybody like that, just pick their brain, because I think life puts those kind of people, the universe conspires to put those kind of people in your life to live up to aspire to be a goal. And they're just naturally representative of the potential for humans, Anyways, do the best you can do. And I'm doing the best I can, and that's all anybody can ask. With that, I love you guys. See you next video.